The rain cascaded down in relentless torrents, turning the windshield into a distorted kaleidoscope of blurred lights and shadows. Jake gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles white against the black leather. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. 2:36 a.m. He had been driving for hours, the rhythmic sound of the rain beating against the car, the only companion in the desolate night. Jake's mind wandered to the events that led him here. He had left the city in a hurry, fleeing from the suffocating memories that haunted his every waking moment. But as he drove deeper into the night, the familiar ache in his chest only seemed to grow stronger. He needed to escape, to find solace in the empty stretches of highway that stretched out before him. The road seemed to go on forever, a never-ending ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the darkness. Jake squinted through the rain, trying to make out the shapes that loomed in the shadows. Trees stood like silent sentinels on either side of the road, their twisted branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the distance, a dark silhouette standing in the middle of the road. Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he slowed the car to a stop. The figure didn't move, didn't even acknowledge Jake's presence. It just stood there, unmoving, as if waiting for something. With a shaky breath, Jake rolled down the window, the cold night air rushing in to meet him. "Hey," he called out, his voice barely audible over the roar of the rain. "Are you okay?" The figure remained silent, its form barely visible in the dim glow of the headlights. Jake's hand instinctively reached for the door handle, but something held him back, a nagging sense of unease that crept into the depths of his mind. Just as he was about to speak again, the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Jake alone on the deserted highway. He sat there for a moment, the sound of his own breathing echoing in the silence. Then, with a sudden burst of courage, he slammed his foot on the gas pedal and sped off into the night. The rain pounded against the car with renewed intensity, the wipers struggling to keep up with the deluge. Jake's hands shook as he gripped the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the road ahead for any sign of danger. But the highway stretched out before him, empty and desolate, as if mocking his fears. Hours passed, each mile blending into the next in a blur of rain and darkness. Jake's eyelids grew heavy, the monotony of the road lulling him into a trance-like state. But just as he felt himself drifting off, a sudden movement snapped him back to reality. In the distance, a figure emerged from the shadows, its form hunched and twisted, like something out of a nightmare. Jake's breath caught in his throat as he watched it shamble onto the road, its movements slow and deliberate. Without thinking, Jake slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop, just inches from the figure's hulking frame. He sat there, frozen in terror, as the figure turned to face him, its eyes burning with a malevolent light. For what felt like an eternity, the two stared at each other across the rain-soaked asphalt, neither daring to move. Then, with a suddenness that sent a shiver down Jake's spine, the figure lunged forward, its grotesque form twisting and contorting in the darkness. With a scream, Jake slammed his foot on the gas pedal and tore off down the highway, the figure disappearing into the night behind him. But no matter how fast he drove, no matter how far he fled, the memory of those burning eyes haunted him, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurked in the darkness. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Jake finally reached the outskirts of a small town, the rain-slicked streets glistening in the early morning light. With a sigh of relief, he pulled into a gas station and stumbled out of the car, his legs trembling with exhaustion. But as he filled up the tank and watched the rain continue to fall in steady sheets, he couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't escaped at all, that somewhere out there, on a lonely stretch of highway in the dead of night, something was still waiting for him, biding its time until the next unsuspecting traveler came along. And as he climbed back into the car and drove off into the sunrise, he couldn't help but wonder if he would ever truly be free from the horrors that lurked in the shadows.